What does it mean to create a marketplace where entrepreneurs can finally see themselves reflected in the businesses around them? Welcome to True Northern Hustle, a podcast from Interact that offers an honest look at the grit, creativity, and resilience behind the Canadian small businesses we know and love. I'm your host, Isabel Lee. This episode captures something we've come back to again and again: the power of community in building a small business. Across Canada, so many businesses begin with a simple idea, solving a gap you've personally experienced. But sometimes that idea grows into something bigger, a space where people feel seen, supported, and connected. Today I'm joined by Cindy Chau, the founder of The Welcome Market, a community-driven marketplace in Toronto's Queen West that brings together vintage and handmade goods while creating a welcoming space for BIPOC-owned small businesses. What began as a passion project during COVID has grown into a platform supporting thousands of entrepreneurs across the city. Okay, let's just start at the beginning. Can you share with us what the Welcome Market is and what inspired you to create it?
So the Welcome Market is a community-driven pop-up market that hosts BIPOC and women-owned businesses that, are in Toronto and the GTA. And so I kind of started off as a vendor myself. So back in 2020, 2021, I had my own vintage decor brand on Instagram where I predominantly sold through Instagram stories and direct messages. And so I think during that time, especially with the COVID restrictions and, limiting the amount of interaction we can have in person, once those started to lift, me and a few other small business vendors were trying to figure out a way where we can, meet up, but also be able to kind of sell to our customers. And so, it started off as a backyard market. And I think once we saw the amount of turnout that we had, we're like, okay, we got to do this again, maybe for Halloween. And so it grew into this Halloween market that we hosted in a small little gym in Ossington before Ossington was crazy busy. And so we had seven vendors and seven of my close friends participating in that. And so now after close to 4 years now, we've flourished to hosting, over 800 small businesses and now hosting 1 or 2 times a month. And so, yeah, our network has grown from such a, humble beginning to now being one of the popular markets to go to in Toronto, which is crazy to say.
I mean, I love that. From 7 to 800, that's incredible growth. That's wonderful. And I assume that being on the vendor side of things and being on the other side of the business, you had an interesting perspective when you were putting this together. Can you talk about what that was like? Like, how did your experience really drive you to create the market the way that you have?
I think seeing it from a customer and seeing it from a vendor kind of helped shape what I wanted the Welcome Market to be. So as a vendor selling specifically with vintage, I felt like there was a disconnect between the market scene during that time. It was either a vintage market like hippie market or an artisan market. There wasn't really a space that integrated both communities. And so selfishly, I wanted to create a space where I can shop a lot of my favorite brands. And one of the things that I also noticed as well, just as a vendor, was kind of the lack of representation. Me participating in one of the vintage markets, that was kind of one of the first things that I saw was there wasn't anybody else that either looked like me or, was in similar age. So I kind of took it upon myself to create a space that I would want to actually visit as a customer, then also being able to, host a lot of similar and like-minded individuals.
Can you tell us why it's important to create a space specifically focused on inclusion, and how have your visitors responded to this?
Going back to, the time between 2020 and 2021, I think I saw, a new generation of small businesses that were happening on Instagram and trying to sell online or through Instagram. So seeing that there was this new generation, but the disconnect between the actual physical markets that were happening in Toronto, I felt like there was the lack of representation, whether it is, age or diversity or race. And so I think the most important is being able to actually show the diversity in Toronto. And, whether it's a tourist that's coming to the market for the first time or inspiring a young adult that maybe has a passion project and can potentially see themselves creating their first small business based off of a hobby and seeing someone their age being there at the market, I think shows the importance of being able to have representation, to inspire others, and to kind of continue to grow the small business community versus keeping people out.
And that's exactly what you're doing. You're building a community, which I think everybody needs and everyone loves to be a part of. And just thinking back, were there any memorable moments that really stand out to you from the last 4 years? And have you taken those moments to feed back into the future events that you'll be planning?
The first one that comes to mind was our first ever Asian Heritage Month event. So back in May 2023, I had this idea to create a, Asian-owned market where I was able to highlight some of my favorite Asian locally made or vintage shops. And it was kind of an homage to my parents who always encouraged me and my sisters to embrace our culture, embrace diversity, and, celebrate where we came from. For May, I was able to work with Madeline from Represent Asian Project, which was a network that I followed for so long. They help amplify a lot of Asian and Asian Canadian voices and is able to uplift by, highlighting a lot of the wins that happen in this community. And so I was able to work with her to put this market on a higher scale. So she kind of worked with us to, market the event. And so this for me felt like an elevated market already. The demand was huge. The reception was great. And so I think it was such a deep dive into a different world. Again, the reception was beyond incredible. A lot of the visitors too would come and share how nostalgic it felt to them, whether it was seeing art that, represented something from their childhood or different smells or different food that they saw. So I think for me was just an added reassurance to continue doing these events.
Amazing. I know you mentioned that you don't really sit in your successes, but I'm sure that the recognition and just the acknowledgement from your community that this was so meaningful must mean everything in the world. Like nothing else can compare to really having that feeling of knowing you've created something that is meaningful for somebody else. So if we move on to our next question here, running a market in Toronto comes with real challenges, especially when it comes to space. But what are some of the biggest hurdles that you faced?
Yeah, I think during the early stages of the market, one of the hardest logistical hurdles that we went through was trying to find spaces and large enough spaces where we were able to host the amount of businesses that we wanted and at an affordable price. I think I know this may be a boring answer, but unfortunately, that's kind of like the hardships that a lot of small businesses are facing at this time. It's becoming quite expensive to lease or rent out a space in Toronto. And so that was kind of like a constant hurdle that we faced. We also value keeping our fees low. And so, we don't want to charge a fee that I wouldn't be comfortable paying for. And so trying to find an affordable space and a big enough space, that has been one of our challenges. And luckily, I believe 2 years ago, we were able to kind of secure a lease, which is a building near Queen and Shaw. And that has kind of become our home. And that was another big risk because, having to pay a monthly fee was something that I was kind of nervous about, but it ended up working really well because it relieved a lot of my stress of trying to figure out where our next home is going to be, where we can pop up next if we can afford it. And so this kind of provided a bit of consistency for, myself and also for the customers and the vendors. So now they're able to actually find us in a specific location and a reliable location. So that also helped with a lot of the stresses. And I think a lot of these markets too provides a cost-effective, low risk in terms of price location for them to pop up. So if they can't afford, a yearly lease somewhere else or just in general, being able to pop up at these markets are crucial for them because, they're able to see their customer base, whether it's on the weekend or for one day, it still makes a difference. And so being able to provide these, short-term solutions for other small businesses is also great. And I think that's kind of how we're combating a lot of the rent issues in Toronto.
Because I know you mentioned 800. I think I've seen numbers of up to maybe even 3,000 small businesses that are in your network. How do you navigate that? Like, how do you identify which ones get to show and which ones are on what schedule?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think, yes, from my side, to make sure that things are locally made and things are sourced, locally and, made in Toronto, things like that. So there is definitely a bit of hurdles that comes through with that. And, I think one of the things that we strive to do is to have different vendors at the market or, still have similar faces, but also still be able to meet new ones. And so I think it's hard because I don't want people to take it personally if they're not able to participate in the market, but there's so many factors that kind of come into it. I don't want to say yes if they're not going to make money because I think for me, one of the pillars of success is making sure that the vendors also make money. I don't want to be, the only one that's making money. I created, a space so that they can also make money. And so making sure that we're providing small businesses that will be successful.
I mean, I love that you said that because it's such an important point that you've curated these businesses. You're not just like a property owner or you own a mall. Like, this is something that has been curated from your heart. And I think it means a lot that you've chosen these vendors so carefully so that both you and them can be successful. And that's really the best outcome for everybody. As we mentioned, you're not just running a business, you're also managing systems that support hundreds of vendors at the same time. How do you keep operations simple and accessible through all of these small businesses?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we've been using from the beginning has been Interac, and a lot of the only platform that we use to accept vendor fees is through Interac. It just provides a seamless transaction without having, additional fees if we were to use, an online processing payment or, online invoices. I think it just provides less stress on my end, knowing that it's easy for the vendors. It's easy for me to kind of see what vendor fees are coming in. Once we're able to let the vendors know, how much it is, it's easy for them to just, again, conveniently send us the vendor fee without having to worry about any security issues or worrying about it coming in on time. That's always been a consistent method of payment that we've been using and has always used since the beginning. And yeah, I think just making sure I stay organized, it's hard because having to do everything, there are some things that kind of slip through the cracks. I think it comes kind of with the territory of having to be organized, and kind of once you get your systems going, it helps kind of streamline things.
I'm sure. And I bet the fact that Interact e-transfer is essentially real time or near real time. The money is debited from their account and into your bank account within usually half an hour. That's one less thing for you to have to worry about and one less thing for you to have to chase after if the transaction didn't work or whatnot. So I'm sure that's good ease of mind.
It eases my mind for sure, and it provides such a seamless method. Every cent counts and every dollar counts. One thing that I can confidently say is whenever someone sends me an Interact e-transfer, the amount that is requested is the amount that I'm getting. There isn't a, hidden 5% fee or a processing fee. Everything is going directly to the small business, or everything is going directly to that person without any hidden costs. And so using platforms where, the money that we're expecting is the money that we're getting without any hidden fees and costs is crucial because it all adds up at the end.
That's incredible. And we love to hear it. Interact e-transfer is becoming more and more popular for businesses to send and receive money. It started off as a way, as you would know, for individuals to send each other money, but it's growing year over year and gaining popularity. But on the topic of costs, and we know that rising costs are happening right across the board, anything from rent costs to just the cost of operating. How do you think, or what would you suggest to small businesses on how they can stay resilient?
I think one thing that I can say confidently is to rely on each other and to rely on this community. I think not feeling like you're alone and not feeling like you're struggling alone. has helped a lot of people, knowing that everyone's kind of struggling at the same time. If you're not able to, afford a pop-up space, reach out to your network, see if, there's other people that have appetite to want to do something that you want to do so that you guys can help split the cost. And then, it becomes a more of a community-based event or more of a community-based initiative. So things like that, I think being able to rely on your community and collaborate ends up being a win-win for everybody.
Every other person that I've spoken to on this podcast is that if you have questions, reach out to your community. People are willing to answer if you just ask the question, which I don't think that is a given in every space. And so I'd like to, kind of tap into what do you think on that from a small business? Like, do you feel like as small businesses, you can basically call out to anybody and ask a question and they're probably receptive to answer?
I think most people are receptive. I think, in this day and age, there's such a hustle mentality where, it's kind of like a fake it till you make it. So a lot of the times that we see on social media, everyone expects owning your own small business or working for yourself is all, sprinkles, rainbows, and everything is great. Everything is positive. That I think we've now seen kind of a resurgence of people being like, this is a hard time for everybody. And we're not okay. Businesses are closing down. And so now I think people are starting to face the actualities of how hard it is to run a small business. Now, more than ever, I feel like a lot of people are now leaning towards each other because we're all facing the same problems and that we're all kind of connecting or trauma bonding, if you will, of, how hard it is to be a small business. So it's great. It's great. I think customers can now relate to it now because they're seeing it firsthand. And now small businesses can relate to each other because we're all going through the same thing. Interact has been helping a lot of Canadians with the tariffs and, supporting community. Last year, we host our 'Tis the Season market, which is our holiday market that we run from November and December. And we were lucky to have a sponsor, which is Interact, which again was such an aha moment for us. To work with such a big brand and work with such a big organization is something that I never would have dreamt of. And they were a crucial asset to our holiday market because they were able to provide different initiatives throughout the weekend that drove audiences to come back, whether it was having a custom calligraphy station or providing different kits to help the small businesses that we were hosting. Interact was by our side from the beginning to the end. And I think everyone was able to kind of see exactly that Interact is supporting small businesses in Canada.
And so if you look back on the last 4 years, what lessons would you like to share with other entrepreneurs who are interested in building a community-based business?
If someone's interested in doing, a market or running a market, my main thing is, do it for the right reasons. And, you have to have heart in it. I think there's been a few times where, there have been a lot of markets that have come up, but they're either in it for the wrong reasons, like only for money or just for the clout or just for the publicity of it. But they end up fizzling out. But I think for longevity and for your own sake, you want to work for someone that is just as passionate about, your small business as, I am, or alongside like-minded people and people that are, eager to work with you. And I think you have to have a lot of heart because there's so much that happens behind the scenes that you have to be in it for a good reason, and being able to actually connect with the community and not just see it as this is just going to be my income, because a lot of small businesses, this isn't just their income, this is their livelihood, these are their friends, these are their fellow neighbors. And so I think if people want to do a community-based business, you have to have heart, you have to have drive, and you have to be in it for the right reasons.
So Cindy, can you tell me, what does community mean to you as someone who's working in different locations and changing markets?
I think community are the people that show up, whether it's the small businesses that are willing to participate, it's the customers that continue to come. I think the overall consensus in Toronto, it feels like, is everyone wants to shop small business. I think whenever I look at TikTok or whenever I'm looking on Instagram, everyone's always highlighting a small business, whether it's like a new up and coming restaurant or a new business that they found. There's definitely been a big resurgence in shopping small and finding a hidden gem. When I started, I believe there was maybe only 5 or 6 markets. On top of my head, I can name like 15. So there's definitely a demand to shop small business. And I think that's what community is, or people that continue to show up for us, whether it's to support, to come out, or to buy.
And I think maybe we'll just finalize with the final question is, where can our listeners find you? Like if you want to shout out your socials and all of that.
Yeah, if anyone's interested to see, when our next event is or, what we have going on, feel free to follow us on Instagram at the.welcome.market. If they're also interested in signing up to be a vendor, they can also check out our website, thewelcomemarket.ca.
Big thanks to Cindy for speaking with me. Her market is a testament to how powerful a community can be, especially when it's built with intention. The Welcome Market started as a way for small business owners to come together, and today it's become a space where hundreds of entrepreneurs can share their work, connect with customers, and support one another. We're committed to supporting Canadian small business owners and honoring the time they share with us. In that spirit, today's guest was compensated for their contribution to this episode. If this episode resonated with you, please be sure to follow True Northern Hustle wherever you get your podcasts. And for more tools and resources designed to support small business owners across Canada, visit interact.ca. Thanks for listening.